Hello, everyone. I'm Justin Tindle, Director of Software Development at E-Blu Solutions. We're a company that focuses on workflows for specialty medication. So these are really high-cost drugs that require prioritizations, eligibility checking to see if the patient, has insurance, that insurance covers the specific drug, specifically around. A good example is like rheumatoid arthritis, where they might need Remicade every 4 weeks as an infusion therapy. So it is a lifelong, rheumatoid arthritis is a lifelong condition, and this drug is obviously used to help them maintain a great and better life than they would without it. So our software is basically helping those patients get on therapy faster, and get them into a better situation within their life. So that's kind of it about me and E-Blu Solutions. But also wanted to say that I don't normally dress like this. It's not my typical outfit, but I like shorts and I wear Bucky shirts a lot, so I don't know if you guys have been there. They have quite a selection. You think it'd be cheap, but it isn't. Anyway, moving on. So basically today I want to talk about E-Blu Solutions' kind of journey from a startup to not having any reporting, any business intelligence really at all, where we kind of started and experimented, and then where we went to and where we are today. So our prior data stack, we moved to the cloud into Azure back in 2018 from on-prem. So we're fully on the cloud. Most of our data is Azure SQL. Some of the products that we used in the very beginning were Power BI for visualizations, and Azure Synapse for data warehousing. One thing that maybe we were doing poorly at the time was actually governing our data, and another thing we're doing poorly is we were building views that were directly accessed by these visualizations against production data. So we didn't really have a data warehouse to begin with. We eventually started to move in that direction with Azure Synapse, but I put a lot of faith in someone that eventually left the company, and with that knowledge and experience. So we ended up hiring someone else to come in, and they had a lot of experience with Google. So I thought, we're here in Azure. Why not give Google a shot? We hired this individual to be our data architect. He's really passionate about it. I think he can do a stand-up job and get us there. So some of the challenges that we had with being in Power BI and being in an environment that really didn't have any data architecture or data lifecycle or processes behind it, there was a lot of confusion around the truth of the metrics. Like, what were, this report shows one thing, this report shows another, why is that? There was a lot of constant explanation of, why that is, why the data is different. And obviously when it comes to data and reporting, you're looking at, if you're looking at inconsistency issues, then you're gonna start to lose trust with your leadership. Not only that, over time, that erosion of the trust went towards the data team. I think incorrectly placed because we didn't have the right resources or the right knowledge at the time, but it did lead to a high turnover rate on the data team. Not only that, we didn't really have self-service at the time. There wasn't an easy way for anyone at the company to ask a question and easily get the data back. It just wasn't there. Power BI wasn't necessarily the solution. You had to be you had to have knowledge of Power BI and DAX and other query languages to help you massage the data and do the things that you want. And there also wasn't any established data governance. Sorry. There wasn't any rules around, how are these metrics calculated? What are even the things that we care about? How does a particular data set look? We didn't have any of that. So not only that, there were technical challenges with the way that we had our environment set up. There wasn't really any integrated source control options. There wasn't an easy way to make a change to the report, with multiple team members doing that and deploy that successfully to one place. It just wasn't a thing for Power BI at the time. There wasn't a lot of environment options. There are ways to manipulate the system or the workspaces to make it seem like there was dev and QA and prod environments at the time, and even those are the same paths that they use now, but they just didn't exist. Also, with the fact that we were in some cases going directly against, with Power BI, directly against views in the production database, it struggled with the large data sets. There wasn't a control mechanism in place that controlled how much data was being returned at a time, and cleaning up of that data and transforming it to something that makes sense to the end user. It also relied heavily, like I said, on a custom SQL where everything, to move data from one place to another, we had to write SQL to do it. There was no SQL, or there wasn't any no-code or low-code solution. And there definitely wasn't any test automations. There wasn't validation of the data before it made it to the end user. So moving from that stack to a more modern data stack, we're still in Azure. We still have all of the data in Azure SQL, plus other third-party SaaS tools that we can get data from. We're now leveraging a tool called Airbyte to do our extract and loading into what Google calls BigQuery, which is their data warehouse, which does obviously more than data warehousing, AI and ML and all sorts of fun things. And then kind of moving that data, from SQL or Ring Central, which is our VoIP service, into BigQuery. We utilize a tool that does some of the loading or some of the extract, Airflow. That's actually native to GCP, in a tool that they call Composer. dbt is actually another tool, a database build tool, and that helps us kind of transform the data, also helps us test the data, and as well basically write queries one time and have that work across multiple environments. And then Looker comes into play where it's Google's advanced business analytics or business intelligence platform that has what they call, or what in the modern data stack is called a semantic layer, that kind of helps define what that data governance is and how the data should look, and allow you to use it across really any visualization tool that you want. But it also, out of the box, provides visualization tools. They also have a tool called Looker Studio. It's another visualization tool, and they've added Gemini AI to it as well. They also have an offering that's a pro service, and really the difference is you're getting that AI, and you're getting access to more features and components essentially than what's out of the box. So Looker, what is it? So it's a business intelligence platform. you can do what they call explorers or data exploration, so that allows some self-service within the platform based on the models that you build it. Dashboarding, it does have an integrated development environment for the data modeling. So you have an IDE that's directly in the browser. You can build the models that you need in the development and production environment. Those are available just out of the box. They also have a fully formed API that allows you to get the data out and massage it any way that you need to. So it is managed on Google Cloud platform or any other cloud service that you would want to deploy it to, or your own on-prem services if you needed to. One thing that's, I guess it's different from other similar platforms is that the data remains in database. So it doesn't actually, when it's talking to our Azure SQL databases, it doesn't actually leave the database and move anywhere else or leave the BigQuery data warehouse. It actually remains in that database. Obviously, the visuals of the data and how you transform it are what's being rendered on the screen. Really, who is this for? It's for companies that need governance for their key metric definitions. If they have a pretty granular, robust data access layer between internal users and external users. It is a role based system that does have permissions, RBAC. I think one of the nicer things about it is scheduling and alerting on data. So let's say you had a customer that had needed a report every Monday at 5 a.m. So it comes in ready for them for that workday. So you can set up scheduling to send that report directly to them in many different formats, whether it be Excel file, CSV, an image. There are other components that can help you deliver it in other formats as well, but you can also ship it. In some cases, what I've done is ship it to Azure Functions to do additional processing on the data. So Looker Studio is another component for visualizations, formerly Data Studio. So Google bought Looker back in, I think it was 2019. And they already had a product at the time for data visualizations called Data Studio. Well, they just last year, if I remember correctly, rebranded all their products to Looker. So if you're looking at this space, there's probably going to be a little confusion when you're looking up information, because you might find stuff related to Data Studio and wonder what is that, or Google might actually talk about Looker, but mean Looker Studio. So there's definitely some confusion in that arena. But Looker Studio is the no-cost tool for building customizable reports, drag and drop. It does have a connector directly to Looker. If you needed to use different feature sets and different charting that Looker might not have out of the box. It is a Google hosted service. It is a SaaS product. It's accessible to anyone with a Google account. But it can be a really nice tool for self-service and analytics, visualizations. But they do have the ability to connect to about 1,000 plus different products. So, for a small business, that could be a really good tool, especially if you're like our small company, where you have tens and tens or maybe hundreds of products that you use that are software as a service to get the job done. So if we take a little bit of look at how Looker delivers, does the data collection and storage, the transformations and discovery, visualization, and delivery. You can see that Looker can really pull data from really almost any place. So definitely a good tool to use for small medium companies that have a lot of these products that you need to pull data into one place and transform and build a single lens of what that data should look like, and build out that data governance, and pull all that data together, and build the KPIs and OKRs that your company is tracking you on. And the delivery, obviously it's a web interface, you can do scheduled delivery. There is an embedded option, and you can do through the REST API as well, if the embedding option doesn't work. So there's actually 2 embedding options. You could point directly to the report, have it render, but then you're gonna have to figure out how to do authentication. With the embedded reporting, it has the authentication piece built in. You can define who the user is coming to your system with your already built authentication and authorization, and then define what permissions that they have. You could store all that in a database, pull it in, and be able to render reports without them ever having to log into Looker. And this is an example of, I think, one of the important pieces for a smaller company that doesn't have a lot of resources. There is the ability for your team members to self-service and build reports. And that's, one of the things to think about is before you do that, before you give them access to that, you need to build those models that give them the information that they need, that's clean and ready for them to use, and that it's defined well, that they understand it before they use it. So in this case, it's one of our sales team members, and this is a report they use constantly with their when they're talking to pharma or pharma customers, to give them an understanding of how much of the I'll say benefit inquiries are basically how we determine if a patient has active coverage with their insurance through medical benefits, what is their cost share, deductibles out of pocket, that sort of thing. How quickly do we return that? So that's super important because we're trying to get the patient on therapy extremely fast. And they were able to, just with a very bare minimum model, build this report that they can then go to the pharma customer and say, well, our BI automation rate, which is, you might not be able to see it, but the blue part right here is less than 60 seconds. So you can see that we're almost at 80% automation rate. So if a practice were to submit a benefit inquiry to us, 80% of the time it's returning within 60 seconds. So we can know almost immediately whether a patient has coverage, is a prior authorization required, can the physician buy the drug and bill it to the insurance company rather than having to go through a pharmacy, which takes even more time when they need that infusion, and they need that drug as soon as possible so they can start feeling better and moving on with their life, not having to worry about the pain that some of these elements cause. So I think the extraordinary thing here is, and I'll say it again, is that an untrained individual in Looker was able to build this without really any training. I think it's awesome. Like, we didn't have to build it, and my team's not over here, but we didn't have to build it. He was able to build it, and he can leverage it and use it for his sales calls. And so I'll jump into what's happening here. So this is Looker Studio Pro. And this is an example of an already built report. And then they're using Gemini AI to generate a presentation. So they were able to already have a self-built report. Someone already built that for them, but they were able to take that and build a presentation that they can then use really for, you know, whatever the sales conversation or the leadership meeting or whatever. So it's pretty neat. Also kind of a novelty at the same time, not as advanced as some other AI, but this is available with Looker Studio Pro. Not to sound like a Looker Google salesman. But with this, you can also, more than generate slides, you can actually generate the report. If you don't know how to use the tool, you can kind of ask it, hey, I need a month over month of our sales, or a month over month of our automation rate to see, how much more we've improved with the technology that we've been able to build. So some of the challenges that we've overcome, I think one of the interesting things between BigQuery and Azure Synapse, with BigQuery, it's a tool that is auto-scaling. It's going to meet your needs and your demands, and you'll be charged for it for what you need. But with Azure Synapse, it's kind of a rigid tiering system where you pay so much for a specific tier, and then you just keep going up until you're paying like $300,000 a month. It does not scale. I mean, it scales, but it doesn't scale out of the pocketbook, so to speak. And with BigQuery, you're using the SQL that you know and love, which is always helpful. I like to learn, but if I can avoid having to learn a whole new query language, that's great. I'm sure the team appreciates it. Also, there's built-in data governance. They have tools out of the box that you got to pay for, as well, that you can utilize for data governance. Airbyte, it has provided a solution for the EL portion of it. They don't really have the T as much anymore with the cloud version. But from my point of view, it's been less fragile than other solutions, where you're having to write out every single thing or visualize every single thing. It's done a pretty good job of figuring it out on how to get the data to you wherever it needs to go. And you can visualize it as well if you want. It's basically a no-code solution. For the transformations, you're looking at using a product like Airflow to orchestrate the transformations with a product like DBT, Database Build Tools, to help you, if you wanted to write SQL, you can. If you wanted to write Python, you can. Really, you can bring whatever language that you know and write a transformation process. It also helps you, I come from a software development background, more in web application development, so it was able to take what I already knew and bring it to, the ETL process and add validation and QA and automation directly into that process, so I could build the CI/CD pipelines that I'm used to, that I know, and get some of the niceties of, that automation and the peace of mind to know that the testing is, it's working, it's finding things that, that we run into or issues that we have. And also, if I make a change, I don't have to think about it. It just automatically happens. Really nice. Looker. So with another challenge overcome, source control integration. We actually use Azure DevOps for our source control and Agile backlog and Scrum, that sort of thing. But out of the box, Looker has source control integration. They don't have a direct integration with Azure DevOps, so it's not going to use all the tools and functionality, but it will connect any Git repo. And I'll go over some things later on that we run into, but it does have a development production modes, so you can see changes in a development environment and in a production environment. So you're not just changing things on the fly and breaking production. Plus the semantic layer, where we have one vision of what the data should look like that can be exposed in any way that you deem necessary, because you have the ability to use an API directly into Looker. So if there's other visualizations or other tools that you use, you can use them. It also limits the size of the queries to ensure speedy delivery. I don't know about you, but I don't know if the CEO or the CFO needs a billion records to make a decision. They probably just need like a KPI to know, oh, a business is doing good. So that limiting the size of the queries kind of make sure that you're always having that constant experience. It's always speedy, it's not slow. And also, I've been talking about the whole time self-service. Lessons learned. As we've gone through this process, my negotiation skills have gotten better. Pretty much everything with Google is negotiable to some degree, especially Looker, as they're trying to gain footprint in that space. But one issue that we ran into is we had a need for external reporting. Well, lo and behold, their out-of-the-box Looker instance that you deploy to GCP only supports internal usage, even though the feature set is available in that instance. Very weird. I didn't quite understand it, and we spent a lot of time talking through it and trying to figure out, well, why this doesn't make sense. I've already built the external pieces to our application to deliver reports to our practices. It works. It seems arbitrary. So that's one thing to think about. So there's another case of them, basically asking for more money just so you can share reports to people that are already available on the web. LookML, as much as they'll say it's easy to learn and easy to use, it does have a steep learning curve. It's like a mix of JSON and YAML. I don't know if that's the best mix, but it is a steep learning curve, and honestly, the amount of work that you have to do in it, I mean, really, it's all about figuring out what that model needs to look at, what it needs to look at. A very flat model to some degree. All the calculations and everything else can be done prior to or even in the implementation of the visuals. They have a very, very strong self-service tool that can help you build some pretty elaborate calculations and metrics without having to have a really heavy model that's more process driven. Also, already mentioned it, Looker's integration with Azure DevOps does require that you choose their Git repo, which is really just GitHub. And you can't, if you're writing code for the model and you're trying to push it to a branch, it gives you an option to do a pull request, but it doesn't know where to go in Azure DevOps, so it doesn't really work. So that's one thing to think about. Airbyte is technically still in beta and can be costly if you're working with a lot of software as a service products. If you're working with a couple, it's not bad. They go into the version 1.0 in September, but we've ran into issues with SQL and date times of all things. I'm sure if you're a developer, you've had a lot of fun times with calculating date times, so it's just another instance of where it's a problem. The modern data stack is a lot more complex, especially for smaller teams, and you want to make sure that you kind of accept the complexity and plan for the complexity, that you have an understanding of what you want your data to do. Make sure that your team is active in those conversations and that they can manage and navigate the complexity. And make sure if they can't, that you find resources that can help them, to help them learn, or to come alongside them. And really the goals for us at this point are just making sure that we have reliable data back to our end users, that we're scalable as we grow and bring on practices and pharmaceuticals, that they have access to the data they need to make decisions. And we want to focus on really cool things too, like AI and machine learning and predictive analysis and solving the hard problems for business. So we'd rather do that than build reports. So having self-service analytics is important. And then just making sure that you gain the trust of your leadership and you gain the trust of the people at your organization, so you can build that reliable data system that they can use to make decisions. That's it. Thank you.